Hello everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into EPW's Research Radio. I'm Rahul Bhise and today we'll be getting in conversation with Dr. Harish Wankhede. Dr. Wankhede is an assistant professor at Center for Political Studies at Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. He has written about caste, Dalit movement, Dalit politics in states of Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh. Dr. Wankhede specializes in political theory, public institutions, secularism, and social justice in cinema. He is a respected academician and has published several articles in the EPW journal. Today's podcast is based on the article Dalit Politics in Maharashtra that was published in the EPW journal on 21st of April 2012. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you very much, Rahul. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Okay. So, sir, I read your article, and my very first question to you is that Maharashtra remained at the very frontal site of Dalit activism under the leadership of Baba Saheb Ambedkar, as he visualized the Republican Party of India as a liberal, mass based political organization. But since its inception, that is in 1956, the party has struggled hard to make an impact over the electorate and was also dubbed as a neo Buddhist party. Sir, how do you trace this journey of RPI?
Right. I believe that Baba Saheb Ambedkar was he was very clear that it wanted to elevate he wanted to elevate the Dalit politics from the narrow caste centric association, and thought that probably the scheduled caste federation is mainly about certain caste centric issues, and there is always need to bring some kind of a secular entitlements with the party. And therefore, when he suggested that the new party's name will be Republican Party of India, it was suggested that now the Dalits have the capacity and courage not only to raise their political concerns and issues, but can also provide some kind of a radical leadership to the other marginalized communities, mainly the poor, the working classes, and the other social groups. So, with that kind of thought, it was suggested that Dalits are now a kind of a bigger they have a bigger role to play in democratic politics, and RPI will be the voice not only of the Dalits but other marginalized communities. While making that particular arrangement, it was also suggested that the political ideology will be based something around the Buddhist ethics, and Buddhism will become the kind of a driving principle for the new ethical politics which is required as a kind of a crucial opposition to challenge the Congress party. And through that, you will find that Buddhist symbols and Buddhist values are also become very much part and parcel of the RPI's mobilization at that part of time. And therefore, with that kind of a connection, it was soon become what they called the Buddhist party. But it has not only stopped there, but it was also become what they call a Mahar party in the later stage. Why it has become like that? Because it was suggested that the converted Buddhists are mainly from one particular community, mainly the Mahars,
Hmm.
and that kind of association, Mahar Buddhist RPI association, become a kind of a stereotypical alliance in which the RPI cornered as a Mahar or a Buddhist party. But it has that kind of a values which Ambedkar thought are required for a new political party, and Buddhism will play an ideological role to promote and promote a political party which should be distinct from the Congress party, or even for that matter the Communist party. And therefore
Hmm.
Buddhism had a kind of a reflective agency to play a new role into political condition at that part of time. And Dr. Ambedkar was clear that Buddhism will have that particular role, but just because of that kind of a conditioning that Buddhism is associated with the Mahars, and with that association, it was suggested that RPI become a Mahar party in the later stage.
Hmm. Hmm. But sir, Baba Saheb also formed a party called as Scheduled Caste Federation, and that party later turned into RPI. So how do you differentiate between Scheduled Caste Federation and RPI?
As I said, that with the making of the constitution, the ex-untouchable already got the constitutional protection under the rubric of scheduled caste, and therefore it already become a kind of a constitutional entitlement for the ex-untouchables, and therefore as a political force it should not be only associated with a small community, mainly the untouchables in Maharashtra, and therefore to elevate the Dalit possibility that they can also represent the non-Dalits, they can also speak for the working classes, for the other poorer sections. That ambition was there vis-a-vis the Republican Party of India. That ambition was not there with Scheduled Caste Federation, because with the name of Scheduled Caste, it was a narrow party for the for certain section of the community.
Hmm.
Post Republican India, I think Ambedkar thought that now, because the constitutional protection is already there with the scheduled caste, and scheduled caste need to play a major role in political processes and a secular role in political process, and through that it was suggested that RPI will have that kind of ambition, that it will not be a caste centric party but a secular party, mobilizing marginalized communities and poorer sections into a kind of a bigger opposition against the ruling elites at that part of time. And therefore
Hmm.
with that kind of possibilities, RPI basically emerged as an alternative or a kind of extension or an elevation of the scheduled caste federation at that part of time.
Hmm. Yes, sir. So the entire Dalit community has a weightage in the Maharashtra's politics, and as we can see, the electoral victory seems difficult without the Dalit votes. And it was the Congress party which was the first to exploit this situation.
Right,
With the rise of parochial right-wing politics in the state, the
right,
Republican Party of India formed a secular alliance with Congress to keep the alliance of Shiv Sena and Bharatiya Janata Party out of power.
right,
Uh, the RPI, led by Ramdas Athavale, argued that the persistent failure of the Congress party in accommodating the voices of Dalits in its mainstream agenda forced him to choose the bete noir of the Dalit politics,
right,
which is Bharatiya Janata Party. How do
right.
you see this phenomenon where Dalit parties are now part of the establishment and doing alliances with BJP, a party
Yeah.
that has staunch differences with the celebrated political ideals of the Dalit movement?
Right. I think these questions has been debated in a far better way in many other spaces. But of course, as I said, that being the kind of a minority in state's population, and if you in a demographic way, if you check the Dalit population in Maharashtra, small community, and therefore forming an alliance was always imperative, required in Maharashtra's politics. And RPI actually did that. But when it formed alliances with Congress, it was had some kind of an ideological connectivity, some kind of a principled position vis-a-vis Congress, because of which RPA and Congress alliance looked little human and better at that part of time. But the right wing shift of certain Dalit leaders and certain Dalit parties in Maharashtra appeared, of course, unethical, because there is no political camaraderie with the right wing. And more than that, I will suggest that it is the BJP strategies, the Bharatiya Janata Party strategy to elevate their own political position, which would suggest that it is somewhere keen to understand the question of Dalit emancipation, social justice in a better way, and to improve their
Hmm.
own name, to improve their own ideological format, that it is a right wing party, it's an upper caste laden party. To improvise and improve that particular stereotype, it was required that they can associate with the Dalits. And Ramdas Athawale's inclusion in the right wing political strategy, or for that matter, making alliance with Ramvilas Paswan in Bihar, or Udit Raj in Delhi for that matter, it had that kind of a strategic ways to deal with the Dalit identities at that part of time.
Hmm.
So it is
Hmm.
a kind of a strategic BJP's entry by outsourcing certain Dalits' name in alliance with the politics. And
Hmm.
more importantly, it is not ethical in the sense that they were not creating their own organic leadership, Dalit leadership within the right wing or within the BJP, but they are
Hmm.
mostly outsourcing these leaders.
Hmm.
And these leaders also basically become participant into that kind of strategic alliance with the BJP, which I have often called a kind of a vagabond, deviant, unethical way of dealing politics.
Hmm.
So of course in that kind of alliances, what you call the compromise towards the Ambedkarite politics, the neglect of the political principles which were crafted and substantiated by Ambedkar earlier. I think there is a
Hmm.
neglect of that ethical, principled nature of politics by these leaders, and they
Hmm.
are basically playing in the hands of the right wing politics, through
Hmm.
which they basically strategically utilize to make the right wing's party's nature as a
Hmm.
better party for Dalit emancipation. So it's
Right,
that
sir.
kind of a
Hmm.
complexity in which the Dalits are basically often being utilized by the right wing.
Right, sir. So what I can see here that it's also the lack of ethical consciousness from the Dalit leaders and also the behavior of right-wing parties to utilize these people and outsource the leadership. So I
Right.
can make out of this answer. So talking about alliances, the alliance politics overtly represents the myopic vision of the Dalit leadership, not
Yeah.
only in the case of Maharashtra but throughout India. How do you
Right.
analyze this phenomenon, sir?
Right. As I said, that making alliance is kind of a prerequisite for the Dalit population because of their small number, mainly the minority status in state like Maharashtra, and therefore forming an alliance is kind of compulsion. But what in other state happened, like the mainly in UP, I think the imagination that Kansharam offered to the Dalit politics was more than the political alliances. That like in Maharashtra, RPI and Congress formed an alliance for a very, very longer time. BSP under Kanshanam refused that kind of political arithmetic and suggested that the upliftment of Dalit politics will be based on social alliances. That Dalits will be representing the other marginalized and other backward groups, and in alliances with that there will be an imaginative category called Bahujan will emerge, and Dalit will be representing or providing leadership to that particular new identity. So it was a very, very imaginative phenomena that happened in Uttar Pradesh, and Kanchana crafted that very meticulously, and therefore the political alliance problem was solved through this kind of what they call social engineering alliances. That there will be social engineering between various communities. They will have some kind of a camaraderie at the social level, and in political force they will and the political level they will emerge as a political force, what they call the Bahujan force. And in that Bahujan, you will not simply eradicate your caste identity, but you will utilize that caste consciousness to build a formidable political alliance and can win the elections. So somewhere the formula of alliances in UP was distinctly distinct, different from the formula which RPI was crafting in Maharashtra, mainly forming an alliance with the political parties. BSP suggested that alliances will be there, but it will be social caste-based alliances, and that caste umbrella will create an identity called Bahujan, and under that particular identity, one can topple the political power. So it was a very, very imaginative idea that UP has offered to
Hmm.
Dalit politics.
Right, right, sir. So I can see the UP model couldn't be implemented in the state of Maharashtra, as you said. So,
Right.
sir, my next question to you, talking about Uttar Pradesh. So the state is getting ready for the election and has the
Right.
biggest population of Dalits in the country. Bahujan Samaj Party has lost its relevance in the past term. How
Right.
dominant parties could play their cards to attract Dalit voters in the election? What is your take on it, sir?
So of course, BSP's vote share has come down from or 30% in 2017 to almost 23% in 2019. It's a drastic change. So one of the major strategy that the right wing party, mainly the BJP, has adopted is to play something called a cultural political role to bring ruptures within the Dalit unity, uh, suggesting that BSP has mainly benefited the Jatavs, and the other lower caste within the Dalit community have not been benefited with from the Dalit from the BSP's assertion. and even when the BSP was in power. So that kind of a challenging message that BJP has crafted across, and through that it was suggested that BSP is now been stereotyped as a Jato party, whereas the lower Dalits, what they call the Ati Dalits, are mainly mobilized by the BJP on certain cultural and symbolic roots. And through that, a kind of a new alliances that the BJP is successfully forming with the non-Jatas, and they became the kind of new voters for the BJP in the recent times.
Hmm.
This is kind of analysis that has been provided by many,
Hmm.
and through that it was stereotyped that BSP is not a kind of a party which represent the Bahujan, but it mainly represent the scheduled caste. Within scheduled caste, a kind of a subgroup called the Jatas. So that stereotype has been produced sincerely by the right wing forces for a very long time,
Hmm.
and through that it was projected that BSP is a Jato based party,
Hmm.
whereas the imagination of the BSP was beyond that. It was suggested that Jatos will of course be a significant force within the BSP, but apart from that, the other backward communities, including the minorities, will be also part of the Bahujan rubric, and that alliance between minorities, other backward communities, and Dalits will form a significant political force.
Hmm.
That imagination was there, but because of the right wing cultural strategies, which I often wrote, a Machiavellian strategy
Hmm.
to bring ruptures and creating something called Jatos as a other social enemy.
Hmm.
That has been produced by BJP significantly, and BSP is facing that turmoil, that challenge, and have very little option to challenge this kind of stereotype.
Hmm.
And through that, BSP is losing the kind of vote share which it had in the earlier elections.
Hmm. 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 Yes, sir. So this is established fact that PSP is going down the hill. My question to you was how dominant parties, let's just say BJP or Congress or Samajwadi Party, for that matter, could play the cards to attract Dalit voters in the state of Uttar Pradesh. How that can happen? We have seen a few candidates going to Dalit people's house and eating along with them, sharing the plates with them. Do this kind of things actually help in getting votes?
That's very symbolic to suggest that right wing party is keen or concerned about the Dalit question, and through such kind of a symbolic gesture, they wanted to portray that the BSP is willing to attract Dalits into its political platform. That is, of course, uh, it's a long tradition that the right wing parties or even Congress party has done vis-a-vis the Dalit question. That they wanted to attract Dalit by showcasing some kind of philanthropist gestures, and this is just that kind of a gesture. But I think UP, it will be again difficult for the BJP to attract Dalits at this particular part of time because of the social and economic conditions. Like the BJP has of course mobilized the lower Dalits into its fold earlier by rupturing the Dalit vote, but the benefits on any indicator of development, you'll find that the lower Dalits have not got any significant elevation in their socio-economic or cultural condition. They are still deplorable and in precarious state, and therefore though the BJP engaged with them and invited them to become part of the right wing force, but on the actual material benefits, socio-economic conditions, they still remain the same. And this time probably based on those values that BJP has not provided them any significant or substantive welfare package, probably the lower Dalits will go back to their traditional parties, mainly Samajwadi
Hmm.
Party or the BSP, and probably BJP will not be having much claim or the Dalit voters, and
Hmm.
therefore probably such kind of a gimmick strategies that BJP is now again engaged into.
Right, right. So, talking about right wing parties, as we have seen, the alliances has benefited mostly the right wing parties by winning seats from areas such as Dharavi and Siddharth Colony in Mumbai. The trend also continues as the Vanchit Bahujan Aghadi and AIMIM alliance benefited the later party, winning them Aurangabad constituency parliament seat.
Yeah,
The non Dalit voters seldom cast their votes for Dalit candidates.
yeah.
What do you have to think? What do you have to say about it?
Right. As I said, that there is always a trust deficit between the Dalits and the other communities. Dalits surely hoped that they can represent the non-Dalits, and they have formed parties and campaigned for that particular on that ideal. But there is always a gap between the like, for that matter, in Maharashtra, the gap between the Mahars and the non-Mahars, for that matter. It was always suggested that the Mahars have voted for the Dalit party, but non-Mahars have not contributed enough to make the RPI or any other party significant to play a significant role in politics. So of course there is always this tension that Dalit will transfer their vote to non-Dalits and make them a winnable candidate, but this will not happen to the Dalit candidates in general. Why? Because the other communities hardly trust the Dalit voters, that they can move beyond their caste conditioning and work for the non-Dalits. So that limitation is always there vis-a-vis the Dalit candidates, and often they fail to challenge that conditioning, challenge that kind of rhetoric, challenge that kind of very narrow understanding about Dalit leadership, and based on that, often Dalit votes for the other parties, but the transfer hardly happens vis-a-vis the Dalit candidates. So that trouble is kind of a perpetual trouble within the Dalit politics.
Right. So you talk about this perpetual trouble, and also you mention that the trust deficit is there, and
Right.
that has a lot to do with this entire thing. Talking about the issues, so you mentioned in the article that the Dalit political movement in Maharashtra, under the leadership of various RPI factions, seems to be recovering a short term dose for a disease that demands a sustained and total treatment.
Mhm.
So, can you please explain what disease we are talking about and what kind of long-term solutions are there for
Yes.
this disease?
Right. Like, of course, RPI thought that they will come up with something called politics of social justice. That social justice is not only a state philanthropist project to protect and uplift the Dalits, but there should be a political voice for social justice. And RPI thought that it will be representing that particular voice of social justice in the political sphere, mainly in democratic sphere. And through that, it was suggested that the Dalits will not only be mobilizing people on the issues of caste atrocities or economic inequalities, but will also force the political elites to think that Dalits should also become part and participate in many other political and socio-cultural sphere. And through that, the larger domain of politics is open in Maharashtra. So though the Maharashtra Dalit has not very powerful in political domain, but cultural spectrum, the intellectual world, or even for that matter, the new economic class, the new middle class that has Dalits have come up with, that is a kind of a larger value through which Dalit politics or Dalit movement can be represented today. So it is a diversified, plural Dalit consciousness that one can witness in Maharashtra. And this is the kind of a way to deal with the Dalit consciousness today, that it is not should not be narrowed down to the issues of social of reservations or caste atrocities, but it is also an issue which suggests that Dalits are now improving or emerging as a political and social force, and can enter into multiple domains and can show their capacities and capabilities to lead those spheres. Like, for that matter,
Hmm, hmm,
the arrival of what you called the Dalit media, the in
hmm,
Maharashtra per se, or the kind of intellectual community which is there in Maharashtra. So those kind of values are crucial, and therefore a kind of making us, institutions, for that one, public institution, more democratic, more participatory, more inclusive. That is the
hmm,
new
hmm.
social justice politics that Maharashtra has opened.
Right. So also, I mean, just the way you said that Dalit is not a monolithic community anymore, and they have various kind of classes among them as well, and every class has their own issues. So when it
Right.
comes to pointing out or answering the issues of Dalit, so we have to consider all of them. Rightly said, sir. My next question to you, sir. Although the political parties are getting benefited from Dalit votes, but the atrocities against Dalit and the entire community don't seem to go down. With
Right.
such harsh realities surfacing almost every single day, how can Dalits hold these parties responsible? How can they
Right.
negotiate for social justice?
Right.
How much bargaining power do they actually have in this kind of arrangement?
Right. Now, of course, the social conditions for a lot many Dalits is still precarious. They still face those social troubles and issues of economic poverty and other almost what you call the draconian social atmosphere in which Dalits survive. Those issues are perpetually there with the Dalit mindset, and it appears that the Dalit politics in Maharashtra per se, or even the national politics, little appears little unaware of this terrible question that Dalits are facing every day. But it is not only that politics is unaware, and therefore there is no mobilization or movement against the issues of caste atrocities at every local level, or whenever there is a case of atrocities or other related issue of caste discrimination emerge at the public domain. You'll find that the Dalit social organization, mainly the local organization, will create some kind of noise around that and try to bring some kind of issues at the local level. And at least in Maharashtra, it is not easy that the issues of atrocities or issues of caste discrimination will be shut down or will be carpeted all the time. There
Hmm.
is a conscious community around these issues, and they try to mobilize people on the local level and try to contest the people who perpetuated these atrocities and try to bring certain justice to the victims. So at least
Hmm.
in Maharashtra, though the question of atrocities and the poverty of the Dalits has not took what you call political mainstream stand, but at the local and the social roots, I think there is a significant force that Dalit civil society has created, and they
Hmm.
and they often tackle this question in a very very significant way and
Hmm.
suggest that the victim should be provided with justice. So its political amplification is not there, but there
Hmm.
is a social civil society which amplify this question and try to bring justice to the victims.
Right. So as you said, the political parties or the political participants may not exactly have the bargaining power, but when it comes to Dalit civil society, they surely seem
Right.
to have this bargaining power with them, and they are
Absolutely.
keeping the mainstream or establishment accountable for their actions. Right.
Right.
So talking about power equations, we have seen various political experiences that have happened, resulting in unions like Bhim Shakti, Shiv Shakti, Jai Bhim, Jai Meem.
Right.
Sir, they all seem to fail miserably post the elections.
Right.
We have seen RPI factions have failed in providing concrete remedies to overcome the social and economic maladies of Dalits.
Right.
What is your take on it?
Right. As I said that these alliances are necessary. They are without that alliances, making sense of the Dalit politics will be difficult in state like Maharashtra. And of course, there are continuous failure, and therefore the requirement is of course not to be comfortable by forming these alliances, but the way it has happened in Uttar Pradesh politics, that there can be significant social alliances which will also reflect in political battles. That possibility is has not been explored in Maharashtra, where the conscious Ambedkarite Dalits can also participate and engage with the other marginalized communities, mainly the tribals, and also try to engage with the other backward communities on their issues of economic inequalities. That possibility has not been explored by the Dalit party in a significant way.
Hmm.
Probably Prakash Ambedkar tried in the kind of imagination that he has created with Vanchit. that is a significant change that one can witness, that
mm,
there are people which are excluded and not been part of the mainstream. The Vanchit Bahujan Aghadi tried to suggest that Dalit politics has a responsibility towards the excluded communities which are vulnerable and powerless, to bring
mm,
them into the power structure, into democratic, and give them democratic voice. So this
mm,
is a kind of a new change that Prakash Ambedkar has invited in Maharashtra's politics, almost similar to what Kanshiram did with the Bahujan idea. But
mm,
here, I think Prakash Ambedkar is more concerned with vis-a-vis those people who are continuously been marginalized and excluded from participating in public institutions, in political processes, in cultural affairs. These communities need some platform, and Prakash Ambedkar tried to create that platform through Vanchit Bahujan Aghadi. And
mm.
this is a kind of a new way of dealing with the Dalit politics today.
So, right as we get from the answer that Baba Saheb's successor Prakash Ambedkar has experimented with his Vanchit Bahujan Aghadi in the case of
Right.
Maharashtra. So, you talk
Mhm.
about the need to build assertive socio-economic struggles over the questions of social emancipation and
Right.
representative democracy under the independent leadership of socially marginalized communities. But
Right.
such alliances prevent conscious engagement with other marginalized sections, mainly
Right.
Muslims, tribals, and most backward classes, in order to
Right.
form a unified front against the
Right.
political establishment, which is dominated by social elites. My
Right.
question to you, sir, is what can be RPI's approach to increase its engagement with other marginalized sections? What
Yes.
measures can be taken by the party to inculcate the ethos of social emancipation and
Yeah.
representative democracy in this case?
Yes, right. That paragraph was basically a criticism of RPS politics at that part of time.
Hmm,
That
hmm,
RPF failed to operate on those lines. That there is a possibility that the Dalit party can also take the issues of class and economic poverty, and can also mobilize farmers and other working class sections. And of course, the other marginalized group like the tribals and the Muslims can also become part of the RPI alliances. But basically the Dalit party failed to do that. That was the kind of criticism. And therefore, in the earlier question, I also suggested that probably Prakash Ambedkar understood this particular challenge to the RPI. So of course, RPI, the RPI factions, multiple factions, are completely defunct today, and therefore there was a requirement of a new imagination and new political philosophy and new political forum to
hmm,
engage with this question. And I think Pandit Bahujan Aghadi is the kind of a platform which Prakash Ambedkar understood is required in today's time.
hmm,
And
hmm,
through that, the issues of extreme marginalization, extreme poverty, extreme powerlessness, exclusion, that question become very, very crucial in
hmm,
the mobilization strategies that Vanchit Bahujan Aghadi has crafted in the recent time.
hmm, hmm,
So there is already a new version of the Bahujan politics, Dalit politics, or kind of elevation of what RPI was doing earlier.
hmm,
Vanchit Bahujan Aghadi is actually taking that lead
hmm,
to improvise or to provide new language to the Dalit politics. And I think that is a better future than what RPI or BSP was doing in Maharashtra. I
hmm,
think somewhere Prakash Ambedkar understood the requirement of the current times, and therefore the the coinage of term like Vanchit is a
hmm,
very, very imaginative term.
hmm,
And through that, a new kind of political force is of course can be imagined.
hmm.
And it has a kind of possibility that such politics, such ethical politics, may become successful in the coming days.
Right, sir. So it will be really interesting to see how um, Prakash Ambedkar, with his political experiments and evolution or the evolution of politics, could gather the votes in real time. Sir,
Right.
we have discussed about the political Dalit political activities in Maharashtra, but mapping the Dalits on Indian political arena. So, what do you think about it? Where are
Right.
Dalit where are which are the locations, which are the hotspots for Dalit politics, and which are the completely um, silent regions, according to you, where Dalit
Right.
needs even more assertion.
Right. Like in late 80s, when BSP was emerging at the national scene, uh, everybody was aspiring that probably there can be a national Dalit voice, and BSP will have the capacity and possibility to connect the diverse Dalit communities into in one voice and one platform, and BSP can represent that particular platform. But soon we realized that BSP become a state-centric party, mainly Uttar Pradesh, and the possibility that it can emerge as a significant party in Madhya Pradesh or in Haryana or in Punjab, that possibility soon deflated. Whereas in Maharashtra, where the birthplace of Dalit politics, you'll find that the Dalit politics again a sideline, and the cultural and intellectual and the middle class politics become a very loud and significant force. So you will find that UP and Maharashtra became the two major state where
Mm,
Dalit politics or Dalit movement has a very important role that they have offered to other state.
mm,
But we will also find that in the southern state, mainly Tamil Nadu, with parties like Dalit Panthers Party, they are also making significant contribution in kind of drafting a new image about the Dalit politics
mm,
in that particular state. In Andhra Pradesh, again, the new kind of mobilization that we can see at the grassroots level, mainly at the cultural level, again, that is very significant. In Karnataka, the angiozation of the Dalit movement, for that matter, or the socio-cultural organization that have emerged in Karnataka, they are also significant. So we have these very prominent two states, Maharashtra and UP, which are loud and provided some kind of directives that what should be the Dalit politics tomorrow, that these two states have done. Then we have this kind of emerging state which have some kind of significant and powerful political leaders and communities,
mm,
Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. And then we have this North Indian state, mainly um,
mm,
West Bengal, Punjab, and Orissa, where there is significant Dalit population. Like Bengal has the maximum number of Dalit population. Um,
mm,
uh, in these states, we are seeing that the Dalit consciousness, which is required to for the arrival of a Dalit movement or Dalit political movement, you'll
mm,
find these all these three states are a little bit silent, or there's a negligible presence of Dalit Ambedkarite or a Dalit consciousness in that real sense. So
mm,
we'll see that these three states, Punjab, Bengal, Orissa, significant Dalit population, but insignificant Dalit movement in these
mm,
states.
mm,
Such kind of mapping is available, and therefore probably the future of Dalit movement is not probably on the making that there can be one single voice which can
mm.
represent such heterogeneous Dalit regional aspirations, but there can be some kind of federal arrangement,
That's
like
right. Mm,
UP will have its own arrangement of the Dalit politics, and Maharashtra can play its own role the way it is playing for a very long time, and probably each state will can develop its own independent version of its cultural and political affairs, and create a kind of a new Dalit mobilization and movement at their independent way.
mm,
So possibility of having a single platform or a single party which can engage such a diverse group at one go, it appears difficult. The possibility is that every state which can have its own independent political Dalit assertion, and based on that assertion, there can be certain camaraderie, certain federal arrangement where Dalit parties can speak face to face each other and bring some kind of a confederation of the Dalit politics at the national level.
mm.
That possibility I can see, and BSP and many other political parties has to play a significant role in building such kind of a federation.
That's right, and that sounds even more democratic as well. Every
Right,
single state having their own Dalit pressure groups or political parties, and they representing their demands over the national level. Rightly so.
right,
So far, we have discussed the topics such as rise of Republican Party of India, its alliances with Congress and later Shiv Sena BJP, the bargaining power of Dalit votes in the elections, and what could be the remedies for poor performances RPI. And in the later stage of the discussion, we also discuss about the locations on the Indian map where Dalit politics or Dalit movements are actively performing and where they are very passive in nature. I would like to thank Dr. Wankhede for their time and the kind of great discussions that we had. I genuinely enjoyed it. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. I'm also very thankful for giving me time and asking me very very intelligent question. Thank you very much, Rahul.
Okay, sir. I recommend everyone reading the article by Dr. Wankhede as it gives important information about the origin, evolution of the Dalit politics in Maharashtra. This article also points out the issues that are present in the Dalit political parties, such as Dalit parties becoming the exclusive clubs. I have shared the link to the article in the description of the podcast. Thank you so much for your time and patience. I hope you liked our discussions. Do let us know what you feel about our discussion in our social media platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. In the next installment of Research Radio, we'll be interacting with Yogesh Maitreya, where he'll be discussing Namdev Dhasar's new language and how it revolutionized the literature not only in Maharashtra but for the entire India. I'm Rahul Bhise, and I'll see you in the next episode.